Hello class. In this video we're exploring many different ways of creating with lines in Adobe Illustrator. We'll start with a brief discussion of open versus closed paths, and then we'll highlight the pencil tool, the paintbrush tool, the blob brush, and then I'll also remind you about some cool strategies you can apply using the direct selection tool and width tool to manipulate your lines in distinctive ways. I'll also point out a few other tools that are essentially line-based, but they're very specialized, used for special purposes, but I want you to know about them in case you want to use them someday, okay? And then a further note is a pen tool, which is such a special tool that we're going to save it for its own video later. Let's get started with these. Just a quick reminder here that Adobe Illustrator is a vector-based program, which means that everything is made up of anchor points and paths. If I use my white arrow or my direct selection tool to click on this red egg shape, we can see that we have the path going all around this edge. And there are anchor points, these blue squares that are selected anchor points going around there. So the path goes from anchor point to anchor point. And when it goes all the way around continuously like this is known as a closed path. It allows the stroke to ride on the path and then the fill to sit inside of it and not fall out. Okay, so that's a closed path. They're awesome. But down here we're moving into working with lines, and lines are open paths. So if I select this one, we see an endpoint over here that's all by itself, and another endpoint over here that's all by itself. So if I go and put a fill in this, the fill is just going to jump from endpoint to endpoint, and there's no way to adjust this edge except by moving the endpoint, which is simply going to raise or lower it, and so forth. It's always going to go straight from endpoint to endpoint. So be wary of that when you're working with lines. You're probably going to mostly want your fill to be set to none. And just before I click on none, I'm going to go up here to View, Outline Mode. I just want to point out that these are the actual paths. There's no path right here to manipulate, okay? So if I go back to Preview Mode, and we see the fill edge there. Again, that's just jumping from endpoint to endpoint, and I'm going to set that to none. Another quick setting I wish I would have shown you a long time ago, but I remembered now, is going to Illustrator, Preferences, Selection, and Anchor Display. I'm here, I think before my anchor points were set to default size, and really you can make them significantly larger, so you could really see the anchor points more readily. So sorry about having them so small in the past. Please forgive me. And let's move forward into making lines, okay? You'll notice on my artboard that I've created a special area for the pencil tool, the paintbrush tool, and further down the blob brush. I'll be using those specific tools in these different areas, and I just wanted to be really clear which tool I'm using so you could recognize the different distinctions between them, okay? So the pencil tool's over here. Typically it's hiding below the shaper tool, which looks like a circle with a kind of pencil or a stick next to it. So you would click and press down, open up this little panel to see the pencil tool. Or also notice that the key command for it is the letter N, as in Nancy. So you could simply hit that letter N and activate the tool. It looks like a little pencil, which is super fun. And then you'll also notice that there's a little asterisk right next to the pencil. And this is to signify that the pencil is ready to start a new path. I simply click and drag my mouse wherever I want it to go. When I'm done, I release the click. And there's my path. You're noticing lots of little blue squares on it. Those are just the anchor points, okay? I made them larger a moment ago, so they're really standing out a lot. Next thing I want you to notice is when I hover over the end of the path, that little asterisk that was next to the pencil has turned into a slash mark. That slash mark means that the tool is recognizing the open endpoint, and I could click at that point and drag, and as I hold down my click and drag, it's continuing the path. I can go all the way to my beginning point. When I get really close, you're going to notice a circle, and that's to signify that the tool is ready to create a closed path, and I released my click at that point, and there's a closed path. So it's super amazing to use the pencil tool to draw a very specific shape that you could then fill with a specific color, okay? And it's amazing. Close out of this color panel. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the fill. If you had a partial line like this and created another partial line, I just want you to be aware if they're both selected, select them both, grab the pencil tool. With them both selected, if you hover over the endpoint, you get the slash. It's recognizing the open endpoint. You can go to an other line's endpoint, the slash appears again, and you can connect those two paths. And here we could leave it open, or we could connect these as well, looking for the circle to create the closed path. Okay, super cool. The next thing I want you to notice is that if you hold down the Shift key, it gives where the asterisk is a little line. That's to signify that if you make a horizontal line, it will be perfectly horizontal, or perfectly vertical, or perfectly 45 this way or that way. Okay, so the Shift key, as we used with the shape tool, allows those perfect kinds of drawing. Okay, and that's true of all of these different drawing tools, to use the Shift key in that way. The next thing I want you to notice is that all of these marks are just a simple line. I could, increase the stroke weight and draw, and it will keep the increased stroke weight. But if I try to do a brush definition like this charcoal line, it does apply to a path that's selected. But if I grab the pencil tool and try to make a new line, it will revert back to just a pure simple line. Okay, the pencil likes to think in terms of a basic line. Is there anything else I want to point out to you? Yes, double clicking on the tool. If you double click on the tool, you're going to get these pencil tool options. Notice that there's a thing called fidelity, and you can make the fidelity either more accurate or smoother. And so if you're drinking lots of coffee and you're super nervous and fidgety, you might want to increase the smoothness setting, and it will smooth out your line, create a nicer flow, etc. If you want to really grab all that anxious energy of jittery coffee, whatever, you want it to capture everything, go more towards the accurate end of this, okay? I usually keep mine in the middle. There's some other options here. For example, if you wanted to fill a new pencil stroke, remember we just talked about that a moment ago. If you want to fill, especially if you're going to create a closed shape like this one, you might want to fill to go ahead and appear in there, so you could select that on. If you're going to create open paths, you might want to keep that off. If you want your object to stay selected when you're done creating it, you could keep selected turned on. Or if you want it to not be selected, sometimes that is actually a nice feature. I just want you to know you have that choice right here. I'm going to ignore this option, but you can explore it if you want to. Basically, you could hit the Option key in a Mac or Alt key to access a different tool while you are still having the pen tool. I never use this because I always use the direct selection tool. I just find it's better for me. But you can do that. And then these are the settings for when your tool recognizes the open ends, the open path, how close it is, and also this idea of editing a path. If you're still really close to it, that would allow you to edit it or not. So let's just click OK. So the last setting, like notice I have this line here, and if I wanted to kind of redraw it, notice that it allowed me to edit that line. That's pretty crazy, right? And that's just because it's still selected, and because I have that edit selected paths on. Some of you might find that super annoying because you drew the line and you're actually trying to draw a new line, so you'd probably want to turn that off. So then when you draw a new line, it doesn't affect what's there before. Okay, so really important to understand that double clicking on the tool allows those options to be accessible. Now let's grab our paintbrush tool. It's right here in the tools panel, and it looks like a paintbrush. And it's the letter B for the key command, B as in Bob, if you want to activate it that way. With the tool active, we're seeing the little asterisk that we also saw in the pencil tool. So that means we could simply click and drag our mouse and go wherever we want to go, and release our click, and there's our path. Notice that the paintbrush comes with a brush definition. It does not want just a basic line on there like the pencil tool does. The paintbrush must have a definition. We can override it after the line is created. Click on basic there and it will go to basic, as you could see. Just going to undo that. By default, it wants a brush definition on there. I can also hover over the endpoint like we did with the pencil tool, but there's sort of a quirk in Illustrator that it doesn't show that little slant line to signify that we're over that anchor point and it's ready to continue the path. But you can click there anyway, and it will continue the path. And you can even close the path also, although sometimes it is hard to get right on that anchor point to close it, actually close it. But I think we did. You can always inspect it with the direct selection tool, really look in there and see if it's all connected or not. But yeah, you could do that. The next thing I want to point out are the tool options. So you can double click over here on the tool, and we're going to see, just like we saw with the pencil tool, very similar options, the same options, just not quite as many for some reason. We could adjust the fidelity to be smoother or more accurate precision based on our mouse movements. We could have a fill come with our stroke or not. We can keep it selected or not, or we could also have the edit selected paths on or not. Just a quick reminder of that one is, if you're trying to create like a bunch of lines like right next to each other, and you have that on, like a lot of times you're overriding what was created before. And so that could be infuriating, to be honest. So know that you can double click on your tools and you could turn that off, edit selected paths. So that way you're not re-editing what's already sort of selected there, and you could just create new things, okay? The next thing I want to remind you about, we did talk about this with our strokes, stylizing our strokes in a previous video, but there is a brush library up here for the brush definitions. So there's some ones you could choose right here, or click on this little icon of the library menu at the bottom left of that panel. And there's all kinds of different options here. So you could have a ton of fun playing with these. I'm just going to go to Artistic, Calligraphic, and it's opening down here. So you can make a line, throw on one of these calligraphic kinds of lines that go flat, thick, and thin. Basically, you just have the path there, and you're putting on this different sort of effect or line quality. Some of these are more like borders, etc. We've talked about some of them before. So know that these are here. There was something I was going to point out, but I can't find it right now. And it has to do with the fact that some of these are scatter brushes. Where can I find a scatter brush? Right there, decorative scatter. So a scatter brush, like, it looks like it's only one thing, like, I don't know, hearts, right? But then it scatters that little thing on the path. So that's just something to be aware of. All right, crazy fun, I know. Now I want to show you how to make your own path or your own brush. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little tired. Let me grab the brush tool and let's take off the hearts. Right now I just want a clean line. And so I'm just going to make some crazy little marks. And let's say I want this line, or even let's do something more. Like, I want that craziness to become a brush setting, okay? You can do whatever you want. You're just going to grab your black arrow tool and select that stuff. And now we're going to come over here to our brush panel. It looks like a little can of brushes, or you can go to Window, Brushes to open up that same panel. And you simply click on that and drag it into that panel. You're going to see a little green circle with a plus sign, and then release it. It's going to open up this little panel saying, hey, this is a new brush. What kind of type do you want it to have? Do you want it to be a scatter brush like those little hearts we just saw? Or an art brush typically is probably what you want. Pattern brush I'm not sure to talk about right now, or these calligraphic or bristle brushes. There's different nuances and it gets more advanced, and we're already getting over our heads a little bit, I think, for this class. But anyways, it's fun, so I just want you to understand this. Let's do art brush. Here's a bunch of settings, again, kind of over our heads, but whether it's fixed width or the width varies based on your pen pressure if you're using a digital tablet, or your stylus wheel, etc. There's all these crazy settings. I'm just going to leave that for now. You could have it scale proportionally to the size of your line. You could have it stretched to fit your stroke length. There's different settings here that you might play with. You could change the direction of it with these arrow keys, etc. It's all kinds of craziness that you just kind of have to experiment with. I'm going to click OK. So notice that the brush I just made is right there. So I can come over here, I could select this path I made previously and then click on this brush and it's applying it. Or I could grab my brush and make a whole entire new line and it's going to apply that thing I made to the line. Because I clicked on scale proportionally, that's why we're seeing it so large. If I double click on my brush panel, I could double click there and reassign it to stretch to fit the stroke length instead, or stretch to fit between guides. Whatever I want to play with, click OK. I could apply it to my current strokes or just leave the strokes as they are and then create a new line. So it's going to affect that line in different ways. It's super crazy fun. Okay, I'm getting super crazy. I know that. I also want to point out really quickly that you can go to your Creative Cloud account right here, and you could go to Discover and search up here Illustrator Brush. You're going to get some different presets like this. You could click on them. Why is it opening in a new window? Wasn't expecting that, but it is. And then basically if it fits your current license, you'll be able to click right here to license it. Then you can download it. So I've already downloaded this one. It's on this other tab right here. So this will come in as, a Illustrator file. Then you just grab any one of these that you want to use and drag it into your brush panel. Choose which kind of brush you want it to be. Click OK, adjust your settings, etc. And now you have a brush that you just created based off of these things. So you can get something that really looks like crayon or charcoal or all kinds of craziness. So I know I went a little wild with this brush, this paintbrush tool. Have a ton of fun with it, and I'll see you in the next section. Now let's move to our blob brush. That's right, a brush that is a blob. It's the coolest thing ever. I love this tool. It's hiding beneath our paintbrush tool. So we're going to go to our paintbrush tool, click and hold down to open up the little panel, and we're going to find that tool lurking beneath the paintbrush. Notice that the key command for it is the Shift key and the letter B, as in Bob. Together will activate this tool. You're going to notice the little paintbrush icon, but there's also a circle going around it, and that circle is the blob area. We can make that circle smaller or bigger using the bracket key. So on your keyboard, right next to the letter P, just to the right of the letter P, Pink Panther, P, the left bracket will make your circle get smaller, the blob area. Tap it or just click and hold down. Or if you want it to get larger, use your right bracket key. Okay, find a size that you like, and then just click and drag around your artboard to create a shape that you like, okay? Or a line that you like. Now the thing to notice with the blob brush is that it's very different from the other two. If I go to select this shape, you're going to notice that the path is not down the center as we would expect for these other objects. There you see the blue path going down the center. Here, I know it might be kind of hard to see actually with a black shape, but a lighter shape. Can you see that blue line better? I don't know. Anyways, the path was always in the center, but with the blob, let me also change the color on this one. The blob, the path goes to the outside. Another thing that happens with the blob brush, I'm going to grab that tool again. If I click and drag with the same color, it will merge. Those just merged into one shape. So really the blob brush can be used for creating very organic, interesting shapes. You could just go crazy like this. Wow, it's so much fun. And that is just one big glob of vector shapeness. Super fun. I'm going to hit my delete key to delete it. So again, maybe make a smaller one this time. And you just click and drag, and there is your line. Notice that this one does not allow any effects whatsoever. If I try to choose any of these, it just does not let them. Because it's like, I don't do that, I just do blob, man. Just do the blob. However, once you create a blob, you can select it, and then you can affect the stroke. So there is a stroke on here. Let me change the color of it. I'll do green, and I'll make it bigger so you could see. So then the brush definition becomes, because it rides on the path, would then go to the outside. So that is the distinct difference of a blob brush versus the paintbrush where the path goes down the center, or even the pencil where the path goes down the center, okay? At this point, I just want to remind you of a couple of tools that we've talked about in the past, but I just want to make sure you know that you can also apply them to lines. So I'm going to select this line right here that we made with the pencil tool, and I'm going to zoom in, Command plus on a Mac or Control plus on Windows. And if I use the white arrow or the direct selection tool, it allows me to select individual anchor points, click on it, move it around, or I could click and drag over a couple of them and move those around. Remember, the anchor points also come with these handlebars, so you could pull those out to adjust the curve, rotate them around, all of those kinds of things. You could change it from a smooth point to a corner point up here. Corner point's gonna have a pointy point. You may even see corner widgets appear, so you could play with those as well. If you do have a lot of anchor points in your object, the corner widgets may not do very much, but you could try. So those are things we could do. And then also, yeah, remember the corners up here that we could apply these different kinds of corners as well. Super fun. And then the other thing we have is the width tool. So remember this robot tulip kind of icon? That's what I think of anyway, the width tool. And so that allows us to go to a very simple, basic stroke. Simply click on it and pull away from the path, and it will widen the path, or it won't widen the path, it widens the stroke on the path. And so these are very editable. Goes very wide to narrow. We can make it go wide again. So even though this is a simple path, we've made it look very complex and very interesting, if not just kind of strange, actually. I'm just playing around here, obviously. It's kind of like a lobster pincher or something. Anyways, those are tools we can use. One thing to point out that is a bit kind of a warning. So if you remember down here that I created this in the brush panel, remember this? I created this one using my own drawing. So what we're having here is a simple path, and then let me close that. On top of this simple path is that brush effect. So you might think you could come to something like this, grab the direct selection tool and start adjusting those points and things, but you can't really do that because it's just the path you have here. And yes, you can move these anchor points and handlebars and all that, but ultimately you just have this sort of effect of the brush definition riding on top of that path. So you're kind of limited to what you can do there. All right, so just important to understand what's going on, why it is working the way it is. So I've highlighted the pencil tool, the paintbrush tool, and the blob brush tool. And remember that there's going to be a separate video just for the pen tool, which I think is the best, special, most wonderful of these tools. Well, I don't know. It's a cool tool. But there's a whole bunch of other line-based tools here that I want you to know about. They're more specialized and you're probably not going to use them as much, but let's look at them really quickly, okay? So I'm just going to fly through these. The first one is a line segment tool right here. So this one you just simply click and drag and you get a line segment. If you click once on the artboard, it's going to open up a dialog box. You could type in your length and angle, click OK. The next one is an arc tool. So the same thing except it's an arc. Again, you could click once on the artboard to open up the different options there. Change the slope, the axis, vertical versus horizontal, X versus Y, etc. The next one, if you click and hold down, open up the panel and you're going to see a spiral tool. Again, just click and pull. You're going to get a spiral. It's so cool. Again, click once, and you're going to have all these different settings of radius or how much it decays, how fast it decays, the number of segments, the style. And you click OK, get a different kind of spiral. I'm going to quickly select and erase these. And the next one under there is a rectangle grid tool. This one is really fun because you get an instant grid. It's crazy. Again, you could click once and you're going to get all these different settings of how many dividers versus horizontal versus vertical dividers, etc. So I just made a second one. Super fun. One thing I like to do with the rectangular grid, and this is a big bonus for sure, is grabbing the shape builder tool and making sure there's a color in there of some kind. And remember that the shape builder tool recognizes where paths are overlapping, and it recognizes the areas in between those paths. So I'd love to make a rectangle grid and just click and drag through and basically create a unique kind of shape based on the grid, right? So you could do all kinds of fun stuff, and you could double click and then pull that out as its own shape. Super fun. I love doing that. The next one underneath, click and hold down, is the polar grid tool. So this is a circular grid. Hold down the shift key to keep those perfect proportions. I'm going to delete that one really quick. Get rid of this. What's going on up there? Polar grid tool, tap once. You're getting all these different dimensions, the number of dividers, the circle dividers versus the those line slice, like the pie slice dividers. So you could set the number of those and then click OK. So the radial ones are these circles, or I forget the language actually, but you have the circles versus these lines. So you could change the number of those. These could be really fun for making logos out of it. So you select it, and then you grab the shape builder tool again, make sure there's a color in there. And then again, it's going to recognize these different paths, and so you could color different ones, have a good old time, and do something fun, whatever. And then you might consider selecting it and then turning the stroke off to none. And you get stuff that looks like this, and it's like, how would you make that otherwise? Like, it's so cool and so crazy, but that could definitely be some kind of logo, right? So you're welcome for that. The next area we can look at, let me delete this, is over here. We stumbled on this when we were looking for the pencil tool. It's known the shaper tool. The shaper tool is basically like you try to draw a geometric object, just kind of scribble it basically. And it's like, oh, he's trying to draw a square, so it gives you a perfect square. Oh, he's trying to draw a triangle, so when you release your mouse, it makes a triangle. Oh, he's trying to draw a circle. Oh, maybe it's not that good of a circle, so I thought I was doing a rectangle. Better circle. There we go. So that's what the shaper tool does. It's pretty funny. It's good if you're like on a bumpy train ride or something like that. These other tools, I'm quickly going to make a pencil line so we have that to work with. And then there is the smooth tool. I almost never use these, but you can kind of, I don't know, rub it over the path, and then you could play with this slider to affect how smooth things are. I don't know, I always found it better to use the direct selection tool and edit the anchor points and handlebars more intentionally versus trying to guess at what this thing's doing. The path eraser tool, if you get it on there just right, it will allow you to cut a path apart, but I always have a hard time getting it on there just right. I think I did it that time. Hurrah! And then what's crazy, this tool is awesome, the join tool. Like, I don't even think these things have to be selected. You have the join tool. You click on that open end and you go to this open end and it connects them. So we tried to do that with other tools earlier, and they had to be selected and all this stuff. This one just recognizes like, oh, he's got that endpoint and he's going to that endpoint, and it didn't work for me. Try that again. I guess it's not working that time. I don't know. So I almost never use these tools because there's other tools that I find that work better. There's another one up here called a curvature tool that kind of looks like the pen tool. This one you just click, and it's always going to be thinking of making a curve. So you're just clicking around, and it's Curvorama. That's what it does best. If you click and drag, it just makes a longer thing, and you can release it. There you go. So it allows you to go back to, like, it's still active, but I could go back to a previous point and move it actually still. Come over there and move that one. So it remains editable as you're working. It's very fun. So if you're into making curved lines, this could be the tool for you. And that's all I have today for your mini optional multitudinal line ways of making lines. It's so wild and crazy. Have fun with them. Again, the main ones are the pencil, paintbrush, and blob brush. So if these seem too crazy to you, just let it go for now and you can play with them another day.